All right, everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly Corn Belt Umpires Association Zoom Lunch Clinic. My name is Jake Samp. We got Connor Singheisen, Dan Adkins, and Russ Lundquist here today. We are going to be talking about two different topics. They're kind of smaller topics, so we just combined them into one video in clinic session. The topics that we're going to cover today are use of video and what makes a good ejection report. If you got any questions, feel free to unmute, use the hand raise function, drop them in the chat, and someone will try to get your question answered. As always, if you got to eat or do something like that, we understand that people are on their lunch break. Feel free to do so and whatnot. So as a reminder, our in-person meeting tonight is at 6:30 at Tailgaters in Brandon. We will also be doing the high school schedule, and we'll have a brief clinic kind of done something similar to this on a topic like this. So without further ado, let's talk about why we would want to look at video. Video will always tell the truth about what you're doing on the field. I don't look at video to say, yes, I was right. I look at video to see if I was in the right position. Like I had a close play at the plate last year. I went onto Twitter and found a video from one of the news reporters, and I was able to look and see, did I get it onto the train track properly, and was I stop set, and then after that, did I get the call right? So I want to look at positioning, cadence, timing, how I move, my body language. Connor, you got anything else? Dan, Russ?
A lot of times we can work with somebody that gives us feedback on how we do something or how we look doing something. And it's really hard to believe them until we see ourselves do it in person. So video is a great way to go back through and look and see what you're doing, see what you're not doing or what you're doing incorrectly or correctly. But really, it's one of those things where the eye in the sky never lies. That's what they always tell us. And it's a great opportunity to sit back and objectively observe yourself and see if what everybody's telling you about your umpiring style or your mechanics or your signal or your positioning or your movement or your body language is actually correct.
One more piece. Oh, go ahead, Connor.
I learned a lot when the first time I saw myself on film officiating any sport, because I could sit there and go, okay, well, so-and-so says this, but I never really believed them until I saw myself do it. So it was really huge for me in my development.
One of the dirty little secrets of a lot of the work that I do is men never listen. They only learn by acting, by being involved. That's why they suck as jurors. I love them. They're great. They're my favorite. They don't pay attention. I've got two guys now, Russ and I are working with two guys that are pro school. They're one is in the Pioneer League. The other is not sure where he's going to be, but probably short A this year. And they are still robotic. They're coming out of umpire school. And we can tell them, and even I can show them, but until they see themselves on the video coming out of every strike call the same robotic way, wanting to get rid of it, not really understanding how, but until they see it on themselves, it doesn't resonate. There's nothing they can do to fix it, or it's really difficult for them to change it. There's no reason to be upset about the fact that we don't learn by hearing. You just got to know that it's not the right efficient mechanic in getting yourself to a different place. You got to see yourself, is my humble.
Yeah, Dan, I agree with that. And I think that video, for a lot of us that are on this call that have, more than 10 years of umpiring experience, we were always taught, go get in front of the mirror and, do your strike mechanic, do your out mechanic, do your safe mechanics or signals. And that's how we, made sure our signals, look decent, but we never had the way to look and say definitively, like, yes, on the field, this looks great. And now we have video as a tool, and it's a resource to help us get better, because we can go back and look at all of these things, and it tells the truth. So let's talk about some stuff that we want to look for.
Hey, Jake.
Yeah, what's up?
Can I jump in here? I just realized
Absolutely.
I don't think we ever talked about how to get video. Do we?
I have that on a coming slide, I believe. I think
Okay.
it's on not this slide, but I
Cool.
believe it's on the next slide. Let me double
All right,
check.
I'll shut up now.
Yep, it is. It's all good. So when we look at video, as we said before, we're not looking to, necessarily say, did I get this call right? What we're looking for is, was I in the proper position? Was my timing good? I plug Sean Johnson's podcast, Time Out with PSOA, all the time on here, because he does a fantastic job with it. And today he had Andrew Fulton on, and Andrew was talking about how he hates the phrase timing, and he would rather use the phrase use of eyes. And so, do we have proper use of eyes when we look at like base work? Where's the bill of our hat looking? How do our signals look? If you are fortunate enough to get a play at the plate, did you get on the train track right? I remember I had a play in Brandon last year that I was on the train track right, and the coach came out for the right reason that I thought he was going to come out, because he just wanted to know what we had. But he came out for the completely wrong reason. And because he thought I was out of position. So I went back and looked at the video, and no, I was on the train track, and I was in the right position. The reason I thought he was coming out is because the runner missed third base, and I thought he was coming out to ask about that. He wasn't. So when we talk about base work, are we in the proper position? How do our transitions look on double plays? Do our signals look good? And then what is our footwork like in the infield working area? That's, for me, one of the things that I've struggled and really focused on the last probably 2 seasons, and I'm still working on it, is maximizing every step that I take in the infield working area. And so when I'm working the bases, that's something that I really look at, because that is that's a personal point of emphasis of mine. Anybody got anything else?
You're 6'5". How do you need to maximize every step? You like 4 to get across the working area.
Because I'm 6'5" or 6'6", $170.
Yeah, we don't want to look like a newborn giraffe.
Which it can sometimes.
Yes, no, it can. There's no doubt. we suffer from the same ailment, Jake.
The other thing I would say with base work is, are we prioritizing getting the angle over gaining distance? And are we in proper position? Maybe this falls under that. Are we squaring our shoulders to the play to the baseball rather? Because it's a big thing that I see a lot of younger or newer umpires err on, is they think they can just sit there and go, okay, I'm going to have everything facing this way, and then just turn my head to see the play. Or I try to close down too much and I prioritize gaining distance over getting the correct angle. And I think we talked about a play last year where Jake had a pickoff play where if he just paused on his initial open step or gate step, I think as Larry called it, he would have been in a lot better position and set to see the play.
I still have that video. So if we want to do a pickoff clinic, we can do that, because that was one of the, when I say maximizing every step, I didn't even need a step on that play. Russ, Dan, you guys got anything else?
No, I like it all. It's
Carry on.
same thing.
Sweet. Connor, I will give you this slide here.
All right, so this is really important to me because, and I'm sure Dan and Russ can echo this, we didn't always used to have access to video. I remember as a high school basketball official, my senior year of high school, having to take VHS tapes to games with me to get film with an envelope and getting it mailed back. And I'm not even that old. So it's definitely becoming more readily available and easily available. Obviously, during games, it's really easy to go on and find a live stream of just about every game ever. Most schools have it, even at the high school level now, where they have a live stream. They have a YouTube account. They use NFHS Network, whatever the case may be for that particular school. But another thing you can do is have somebody go with you, record you. If you're working fall ball or you're working a summer league game, just tell the coach, hey, I'm gonna set an iPad down here in the corner to record my work so I can go back through and look at it later. And most of the time, coaches will appreciate that. You may run into a couple that are just not as keen to understand the purpose for that, and they think it is you're using it for another purpose, or they can use it for a purpose that benefits them rather. But 99% of the coaches will definitely appreciate the fact that you want to stick up a GoPro or an iPad in the corner and film your plate work or film your base work. If they're really interested in bettering the game and having good umpires, they're going to appreciate the fact that you're willing to put in the work. A lot of times, like it says in the slide, just ask. You're contacting the coach 2 or 3 days before the game. Hey, will this game be live streamed? Perfect. I want to use that for development for myself. Or when you show up on site, if you forgot. A lot of times it seems like high school baseball in South Dakota is weird because you don't really, I don't know. It was really hard for me to get access to contact coaches to confirm game times and locations and everything like that. So ask on site, at the plate meeting, hey, is this game being live streamed? And 9 times out of 10, out of 100, they'll give you that information on the spot. It's really easy to find. Most of the time when we get game film, it's not going to be great. You're not going to see, like, even replay at the college level still isn't great in 99% of the games that have it. The Northern Sun just expanded their replay, schools to replay, and that quality is very, very grainy. You're looking for major issues, and that's why we can't really talk about do we get to play right or wrong, because 99% of the time, you're not going to be able to tell if they're on the bag, above the bag, or past the bag. You're just going to be able to look at your footwork, your positioning, all the things that you did to put yourself in a position to be successful when calling that play. So that's really what you should be looking for.
Yeah.
In every sport I work, I find a way to take some sort of pen and paper and write down times, plays that I want to go back through and look at, because I can sit there. I'm going to watch, if I watch a game film, and I do this a lot for other sports that I officiate, like for me, basketball is a huge one. I can sit there and watch a basketball game, which is at the college level, it's 40 minutes long. And it'll take me an hour and a half to break down to go through and break down film and pull plays from that game, because I'm watching the play 3 or 4 times. Baseball is a lot different because 99% of the calls are going to make themselves. I think the phrase they use is to be a 3% umpire, not a 97% umpire. Be ready to get the 3% of plays right that you have to get in order to be really good. So go back through and look at those things, or note times where you have issues, or you think you're out of position, or a play blows up on you or catches you by surprise, or you hear a inordinate amount of reaction from the dugout. Those are the plays you want to go back through and look at your positioning, your mechanics, your cadence, your timing when you decided to play, not when you called the play. And those things are really going to help you benefit and improve in a quicker method, as opposed to watching the 14 pitches that one kid threw to one at bat, because all I could do is throw fastballs down the middle and the kid kept fouling them off. Right? We don't want to watch that. It doesn't benefit us.
The thing that I started to do a couple years ago, and it didn't matter if this was a teener game or a college game, I always carry a notepad in my back pocket when I'm on the base, and I got my lineup card holder when I'm on the plate. And one thing that I do is I will write down weird plays or anything at between innings, or something that I want to talk about post game. And the kind of the way I approach is, if I'm writing it down and I don't have video for it, I would really love to have video, because I want to see it again or talk through it. And so, forced play slide situation, if we have a forced play slide situation, hey, what'd you see on that? Oh, he didn't slide directly into the bag. We had contact or whatever it was. Being able to notate that stuff, because while I like to think I have a really good memory, I'm not going to remember everything that happens in a game. And so being able to maximize the time that I have to do video review is really important. I know Monty Tilgner, who's a Division I college football referee, he carries a recorder in his pocket. But at timeouts or at media timeouts, he'll just pull it out and, was whatever enough for a insert whatever penalty. He might not have put a flag down, but that's something that I know he does. Anything else on video, guys? Any questions on video?
No, good job.
Thanks. And every coach that I asked for video last year was more than willing to give video in South Dakota. I had a situation with an umpire where we had a coach we had a play at the plate, and a coach came down, and we had a whole situation that we had to handle. I grabbed the iPad video because I knew the coach, and I said, "Hey, can I get the video for training purposes?" Yeah, absolutely. I had another one where I blocked a kid, and the coach was like, "That's not a block." I'm like, "Yeah, it is. Send me the video and I'll show you." And he sent me the video, and I showed him where it was a block. And now he knows the rules. So let's talk about ejection reports. I have gone in and sanitized these ejection reports to just omit team names and umpire details, but I've tried to leave them as authentic as possible. And we're not, by no means are we criticizing anyone. Everyone, all of the ejection reports that I have permission to use. But we're not criticizing anyone. This is purely for educational purposes. So when we have
these, before you go,
yep,
Jake talks about these are for educational purposes. Ejections are weird situations. They're frustrating, high intensity, high emotional situations, and they're not easy to do well. So you may sit there and think, okay, well, Connor's ejected 47 people in the last 3 years. Not accurate, by the way. Close, but he's perfect at it. No, every situation is different, and we don't see a ton of ejections as individual umpires. So this is something that when we do have one, we need to make sure that we are as accurate as possible with information, and we do it well, so that when your assigner has to deal with it, or the state association has to deal with it, they have factual information that's correct, that's prepared in a manner which fits the incident and gives them legs to stand on when they issue suspensions. And that's really why we're going over this, because it's not easy to deal with. You only learn by doing it, and you hope you don't have to do it very often. So we want to make sure that we're preparing y'all for what comes next.
And to that point, I was out at the state meeting a couple weeks ago, and there was some discussion on, ejections, because last year's the first year that South Dakota started tracking ejections. And the thing that I don't want any umpire to take from this is that an ejection is a bad thing or an ejection is a failure. Sometimes you just have to do it. And I feel like sometimes there's mixed messages that will be sent. But if you feel that it is necessary to eject, write the report up. And if you got questions, feel free to reach out to Connor. We'd love to talk to you about it and go through it with you and turn it into an educational perspective. And I've screwed up plenty of ejections. I know that. And go ahead, Mr. Singheisen.
I'm gonna cover this slide, then I'm gonna put Dan and Russ on the spot. So when we talk about ejection reports, the state association is going to say one thing, and they're going to have like a hard deadline, right? Which I think SCHSA is 48 hours. You don't want to wait 2 days for an ejection report to come in, because by the time they get ejected, as they're leaving the dugout, that coach is calling somebody. You better believe it. They are calling somebody as they're walking out the dugout. They're calling the assigner, they're calling the state association, they're calling anybody and everybody, their AD, anybody they can find. Get the information done as quickly as possible, efficiently as possible. You know, before you leave, like my general rule of thumb is noon the next day. If it's a black and white ejection, no issues, no prolonged arguing, no really, you eject them, they leave the dugout immediately, they don't come out on the field like that. That's like the most like, okay, yep, I gave you every opportunity in the world, you didn't want to, all right, you're done. That's not a very high intensity situation. If we have a weird atypical situation, we have prolonged arguing, we have thrown equipment after the ejection, we have charging, we have contact, we have just about anything that is not run-of-the-mill stuff, do it before you leave the site. Make sure you communicate with your partners, you have a discussion about what happened after the ejection, write everything down so you have notes, record good notes, exact language, which I think we'll get into here. But do everything you can on the field to record it, because then you have exact stuff in the moment as opposed to trying to recall what he said 2 days later. And B, it allows you a chance to bring your emotion level back down and bring yourself down a little bit more under control, because they're a high intense situation and it's emotional for not only you and the coach, but the fans too. So give yourself a little bit of time to cool down, bring yourself to an even keel, and then resume the game. And then after the game, text the assigner or coordinator immediately and just say, hey, had an ejection, yada, 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 filling out the report as soon as I get home, or whatever the case may be. Dan and Russ, you guys are a little more experienced than I am in life in general. So you guys want to talk about what leads, or not necessarily what leads, but when to decide whether or not to eject a player, or how we decide that?
Let me jump in right on the heels of one of the comments you made. The other benefit of doing it when you're at site is your partner's there. Pretty monumental ejection that I had with a guy at a school that's literally 3 blocks from my house at McAllister. It got real complicated, and we needed to be really on point with our ejection report, because the school has a 0 tolerance policy for anybody who is employed there using foul language. And we made an executive decision with the help of our assigner to not put that component or stress that component, so that we didn't want to see the guy necessarily lose his job. He probably deserved it, but that's not a decision that we wanted to be part of. We didn't want to have a thumb on that scale. But so by doing it immediately, literally in my driveway with a couple of beers, be careful with that. Get the report done before you get too far into the beers. Because anything that can change your ability to recall or to think clearly is not helpful. So I'm not joking about that. But the thing was, he and I were able to sit there and talk about everything that we remembered. We helped each other to figure out exactly what the best posture for the report was. The ejection was completely supported. As a teaching moment for my partner, he learned that because the video was available, he was in the complete wrong position to have made the judgment that he made. He was in fact completely wrong. And that contributed to why the behavior got so out of hand. For a learning process, it was invaluable. But keeping it on site, doing it quickly, has every possible advantage. The minute you leave the site, if you're talking about tomorrow morning, if you're talking about 48 hours later, you're losing ground. And again, what these guys have said is dead right. The argument has already been conveyed back to the assigner or to the people that make decisions. And even if it's a fairly straightforward ejection, you don't know. This could be that coach's 3rd or 4th in a short period of time. And that has consequences for the league, for the team that he's coaching, for liability purposes, all that stuff. So it's past your pay grade. Your job is to get that report out as quickly as possible. On the question directly to Russ and I, when do you know he needs to go? If you're doing it long enough, I think it becomes this way. They don't stop. They don't let you keep them in the game. I went 11 years without an ejection in a college game because I figured I got tools that people don't access. I've got more opportunities to communicate to people and to keep people from saying the thing that they don't want to say. And I also have a rule that if nobody can hear it but me, Who heard it? Who's got to act on it? What resonance does it have if I'm the only one that heard it? And if I can talk the coach off that ledge or the player out of that kind of conduct, I'm going to do it, because it's better to keep that player on the yard. It's better to make them wait for the beer until I can have one. All those fun little stories that we tell. But the point is, the game is better with all the participants finishing the contest. I do believe that. If a coach simply will not stop, and we just saw it in a video from the opening weekend of Division II, a coach we know very well, and frankly, I respect the hell out of this coach. He was angry at ball strike and decided to use a check swing decision, and he decided, I'm going to lead. There was no way you're going to protect him. The sort of things that he said, the way that he said them, the volume he utilized, you're going to know that coach has got to exit. I literally told Bishop at South Dakota State, he came out on me on a check swing, as a matter of fact. And I said, you got one more warning if you can just stop shouting. He said, fuck that, get me out of here. Go. And that he took it out of my hands. There's nothing else. And of course, when I put that language in the report, he didn't like it. He wasn't happy that it made it to the report. But how am I not putting that in there? How do I not tell Mike Conlon? How do I not communicate to my colleagues in the summit that this is what he said? You have to tell the truth. You got to be concise, but you got to be complete. Russ, you have a little bit more experience with ejections than anybody on this call. What do you think in answer to Connor's question?
Well, the new and improved Russ has a different take, as you may.
Who built that new Russ? Who's the owner thereof?
It's clearly my king and my savior who did that.
I don't answer to that title.
I know you don't. That's why it's not intended to be you. I actually love the question, Connor. And I will dovetail with what Dan said, because he's 100% right. And yes, we've ad nauseum gone back and forth with each other on this over 25 years, literally. It comes a point in time, and this is more true the higher you go. The individual that you're dealing with actually is really in control of themselves, because they are professional people. They're in control of their emotions, and they're actually not, in a strange way, they're not actually dealing with you. Their attempt is to deal with their own team. They're using you almost as a conduit to do that. And they will just, without saying the words, it's pretty rare, but without saying the words, get rid of me, that's what they're telling you, is get rid of me.
I can't believe
yeah, they've just made that decision. And it's happened to me numerous times in the past couple of years, and numerous is probably like 3 or 4. So it's not like I'm going kind of wild, but in every instance, they know that they can't do something, so they've just made the choice to do it, and they know what the consequences are, and they're willing to deal with those. So I think that's my answer in a long roundabout way, Connor.
Thanks. I think it's something where, it's something we never really talk about, is how ejections should be handled. We talk about how they should be handled, but we never talk about when they should happen. And I would say that in my 8-9 years of college baseball, I've probably had less than 5. And every one of them has come after screaming obscenities at me that everybody in the ballpark can hear. And it's kind of like, yeah, you can't do that. And I've never had an issue with any of them.
One more thought. Sorry, Connor. One more thought about when's the right time to get an ejection. You can get yourself in a little bit of trouble if you get people too early. But you can really, really ruin things if you miss ejections. You do not want to miss ejections, because what ends up happening is, first of all, they typically know they should have been ejected, so they lose a ton of respect for you. They then begin to think, well, this guy's a doormat. I can do whatever I want. And also, the rest of the umpires that follow behind you have to answer for you. And that's terrible.
Absolutely. I think, is it going to make your game better by not having that person there? And that's really the question you have to ask. My most recent ejection came in defense of my partner because my partner was not apt to warn him in the third inning or the fourth, and finally got him in the middle of the fifth, and he kept going. And then the coach left his position to argue balls and strikes after a warning and put himself roughly at the 45-foot line on the edge of the dirt while the pitcher is in his motion, after I told him twice to go back to his box. And at that point, I really didn't have an option. We can't have him standing there with play going on, and we're leaving the box, and the plate umpire was not addressing it and not handling it, and it made our game better because we didn't have to deal with that anymore.
Yep.
All right, on to the next slide. Jake, you're up.
There we go. And make sure I'm on the right slide. Yep. Okay. So let's talk about what makes a good ejection report. I've been on an administrative side before. I've been on the umpire side of it as well. There are certain things that make ejection reports very, very helpful to an assigner or a coordinator. There are also things that make it a real pain in the butt to deal with. And so what I like to see in ejection reports, clear and concise, just get to the point. And we have some examples, as I said before, in kind of the disclaimer at the beginning of this. We're going to have stuff. It's been sanitized, but it hasn't lost its educational value. But be clear, be concise, and then just the facts. There's one in here I had where a kid did as close to drawing a line in the dirt as he possibly could, and that ejection report was 3 sentences. It didn't need to be 3 paragraphs. It just strike 3 was called. Batter did this. He was ejected. The game proceeded without further incident. You don't need to have all of this fluff in there, because you're just opening yourself up to criticism the more you put in there. Sometimes less is more. So if you just leave the facts in there, we can defend you a lot better.
Your assigner is using this, and the athletic director and the conference is using this report as a basis for suspension. You're not telling a story. You're not spinning a tale. You're reporting the facts of what happened. Be short, concise, and factual, because anything that's in there that's not accurate is going to be used, and it's going to, by the AD, by the coach, and that ejection is going to be overturned, and they're not going to be suspended, and they're not going to be punished for their actions because we were inaccurate in our report.
The last thing, if you eject someone for language, write it all down. Okay, I want, as an assigner, as a coordinator, and Connor, Russ, and Dan will attest to this, we want to know what was said. Don't paraphrase, write it all down. Okay, and when I said I sanitized these reports, I did. But if there was profanity in there, I left it in, because that's how you write a proper ejection report. Anything else kind of on, did I miss anything on what makes a good ejection report?
I think you have to remember a couple of things about writing this stuff. You have to know who your audience is. And I will tell you that your audience is not your coordinator. Your audience in the college world is actually very likely the athletics director and also the president or chancellor of the institution, who may very well, in the college world, for sure the president and the chancellor have a PhD. A lot of times the athletic director will as well. So they understand writing. And you need to be, yes, clear and concise is a great way to say it. They also don't take very kindly to editorializing. They don't care if it was a good ball game or the pitcher was doing great or the batter was 4 for 4 and it was the 5th at bat. Nobody cares about any of that because it's not germane to the situation. That's what I got there. I can't express it enough. Know who your audience is.
Russ, to your point, I think another piece to add is you're talking about, let's use the high school or the Legion level as an example here, because that's what most of our umpires are working here.
Okay.
You're writing to the Legion commissioner, the athletic director, or whoever is the head of the Legion Association, and then probably the Legion president as well. Okay. And if it's a coach that is getting ejected, you want them to be able to take this piece of paper and say, this is what you did. You did this, and let them hold themselves, and then let the association hold the offender to the fire, because this is really, really well written. In hockey, we have disciplinary hearings if we give out certain penalties. I've gotten out of disciplinary hearings just by writing good reports, because there was no wiggle room for the offender. And they're like, yeah, we don't have any questions for you. Like, we don't need it. We don't need your attendance. And so give the people that are going to use these reports, give them the tools that they need to hold offenders accountable. Because what we're going to end up doing is, over time, hopefully we can cut down on this nonsense and we don't see, umpires leaving the sport at such a rapid rate because of abuse. Any questions or anything like that on what makes a good ejection report? Otherwise, let's start talking about what makes a bad ejection report.
Hey.
What?
One of mine's up there.
Yeah, but you're last, so we got time. We'll build to it.
Yeah, we'll build to yours.
Wuss.
I did it that way intentionally. We'll just go
No
with that.
Stop it.
There's a lot of new faces on this call this week. We have fun here. We do what we do because we enjoy this, but we have a lot of fun doing them too. So hopefully that comes through on these calls. This is a lot of fun for the four of us. So what makes a poor ejection report? Grammatical errors. There is no worse feeling that I have than hitting submit on an ejection report and realizing I missed a comma or something like that. So I always copy and paste it into Word. Another thing that I try to do as well, Grammarly.com has a free account that you can use that'll just check it for your basics grammar that you learned in, like freshman level English stuff, which is, good enough for most of these reports. Run it through there. A good ejection report that is free of grammatical errors just builds your credibility. And it helps. Long-winded, be short, be brief. Opinions on supplemental discipline. So there's a report in here that has an opinion. And I found out after the fact that the league that this was sent to wants that. I think as a golden rule, that is bad. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that made the ejection. You're in the heat of the moment, and so you'd want to see them held accountable. I'm very much of the opinion, write the thing up and let people at whose pay grade is a lot higher than yours take care of it.
If they want your opinion, they'll call you and ask.
Yeah, exactly. If they want your opinion, they will call and ask. And then ejection reports that just don't make sense. I realize that there's times where we have, time constraints where, we're under the gun to get an ejection report in. There was one last season where I had an ejection, and we were driving back, and the cell reception was so terrible we couldn't get the ejection report done in the car. And I sat in Connor's driveway for 15 minutes doing the ejection report with him, because we just had to get it done. But make sure it makes sense, and follow the golden rule. The better the ejection report, the better your supervisors can defend you. Connor, any thoughts?
Yeah. Before you hit submit, read it out loud to somebody. Even if that somebody's just yourself, read it verbatim out loud, word by word. For those of you that may not know, verbatim. That's a big word for those lawyers out there.
Yes, it is.
But read it out loud, because that's how you know if it makes sense to the person reading it or not. You can sit there and read it back in your head. Well, you know what you're trying to say. Whereas when you force yourself to read it out loud, you actually read the words you put down, and you're like, that doesn't make sense. I got to correct this. And I think that's a huge step, or a huge beneficial part of making sure your ejection sticks, is making sure it sounds legitimate and you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Let's talk about ejection reports. Okay. So for some context, we're in extra innings on this game. I'm not going to read this out loud, but a couple points here. First, so we are in extra innings. There's a couple things in here. This is the one where the league wanted the supplemental stuff in there. I would just leave it out and let them call you if they have questions. But this is a 2-umpire system, and we got U1, U2, and things like that. And so from the first time that I read this report, it was confusing, because I'm thinking this is a 2-umpire system game. Why do I have U2 on here? Because it's not 4 or 6 umpire system. And so, just a couple things there to consider. A couple good things, it's verbatim of what the player said. Upon ejection, he left the dugout in a timely manner without incident. I think that's an important fact to put in there, because if the higher ups are going to consider stuff on top of it, they want to know that. So that's a great sentence in there. You're going to see something to that extent in most of these ejection reports. And that's something that is something that is important to know, because that, there's, and I'm not going to say who it is, but there's a video of the coach getting walked off the field after getting thrown out by the ejecting umpire, and this coach is just chasing the umpire across the field. Well, not chasing, but he's like following him across the field, and this umpire literally walks him over to the door. That's something that you'd want to know about. Russ, Dan, Connor, I know you guys have seen this report already. Anything else that I may have missed?
Yeah, I'll say again, as an umpire writing a report, knowing my audience, let's hypothetically say that the person receiving this report is the water polo coach who happens to be an associate athletic director for the baseball program, because the seasons don't overlap. So this individual might not know what RF is. So write out right fielder, and write out center fielder. I know it's a very small point, but give these people all the possible information without having them think or have to look something up or go ask somebody else. Let them read that report on their own and not have to guess. It's a very small point. I conclude that, or I admit that.
This is a great example of Russ's comment on editorializing. There's a lot of unnecessary information in there. Top of the 11th, 6-6 game. Line drive hit to right field. Ruled no catch by the base umpire or by the plate umpire. The number 4 playing center field said this, and this, and was ejected by the game by the plate umpire or by myself or by my partner. Player left the field without incident in a timely manner. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all the information they need right there.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I know this because I know the umpire that sent this to me. The umpire that wrote this game report was not the ejecting umpire. If you're the ejecting umpire, write the report. You know what happened best. You are the best person to convey. If I'm working a game with Russ and I kick someone out and I make Russ do the incident report, our coordinator is calling Russ because Russ is the one that filled out the game report. And the worst thing that I think Russ could say is, I don't know, you have to call Jake because I didn't eject him. Okay? So if you're the one that does the ejection, just do the report. With hockey, we got to do incident reports all the time. Like I got incident reports down to a science. I don't think a complicated ejection report probably requires, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. But there's, I think it's ejection report number 3 was one that I had. It took me less than 5 minutes. If you're the one that does the ejection, make sure you do the report. Anybody got anything else? Awesome. We'll roll on to the next one here. Sorry, it was this one. This is the one that took me less than 5 minutes to do. It's 1, 2, 3 sentences. I think in hindsight, I probably should have put at least what inning it was in. But other than that, I don't know if there's any other additional details. That we can add here. Russ, Dan, Connor, I'll let you guys kind of pick this one apart if you want. Otherwise, we can move on to the next one.
I like it.
Never said in here he's ejected.
Yeah, there's
Say that again.
You never said he was ejected in the ejection report.
Gotcha. Yep.
Again, you're talking with people who may not know all the details and who don't know all the details. If you don't ever say they were ejected, but you filled out an ejection report, they may sit there and go, well, then why am I getting this report?
Mm-hmm. Fair point. Move on to 3. This was a game being worked in the 3 umpire system. Yes, we have some acronyms in here. This was actually by an assistant coach, not a head coach. So anything new on this one, guys?
I think it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, it gives you the information you need. And it's very succinct.
It's one of the easiest ones I had all of last year.
Yep.
Why are all these yours?
Because I don't have access to the state ones.
I'm kidding.
4th one. So this one, and we'll talk about the situation next week. We'll just kind of talk about the contents of the report this week. So
hey Jake, Russ
Hey,
had
what's-
mentioned don't use like RF. I was gonna chime in then, but I noticed you had put R2. Are they gonna
Yep.
know what we mean by then?
That's probably a good point.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, and that's probably something I'm going to do to change how I write ejection reports now. Yeah, I guess it's probably something that I'll end up changing how I write my ejection reports.
Good catch, Jay.
Well, no, I know we all know what we're talking about, but I never even thought about that till Russ said it as well. So,
Yep. So, we had this was a coach that already had a warning. Then we had a weird situation come up. We got together, and then, the coach ended up getting ejected. I guess, Connor, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts on this one, but I'll keep it to related to what we're talking about right now. So, in addition to this situation, I also had to write an ejection report for a prolonged suspension on top of this, because the coach had been ejected. He had been notified that he had been ejected, and he continued to argue and use abusive language directed at the umpire after he was told to stop. And the assigner said, "Write it up. We'll give him 2 more." And I said, "Okay."
Excellent.
All right, Ross, I'm going to turn this one over to you.
Why do you do this?
Why? Because it's fun.
Yeah.
Because there's educational value in all of this.
Actually, there's so much education value in this for me personally. Yeah, as you said, this is my report. And as I read through all the other reports, and including mine, this one, I noticed that there are grammatical errors, as you alluded to, Jake. Punctuation. There's going to be some words that are actually even missed. Like, I think I missed the word "in" at one point in time, and just it to Jake or to Connor's point, read it out loud and it doesn't make sense. And honestly, I had 3 other guys, excuse me, that were on the field with me that read through this report. None of us caught it. So you can never be too careful with this. So, I mean, this goes to, there's a lot of rules that are involved in this one. You copy and paste the rules. It's very simple. Just copy and paste the rules. You can't go wrong. This individual violated rule 711, or did not violate rule 711H. He did not violate another part of 711H, the note. So I had no idea where the baseball was, because I believe it was blocked by the catcher and it was under the catcher. So I had no idea where the ball was. All of a sudden I see the ball kind of gently, softly, slowly rolling to my left down the first baseline extended. At which point in time I'm like, I don't have clearly hindered. So I just let play happen. I let it go. And this is in the bottom of the 9th inning in Game 3 of the Super Regional. So the winner of this goes to the Division III College World Series. So there's everybody's a little bit tight, and there's a little bit on the line here. So these people think, I wonder if these people can get this right. So he said it to me in no uncertain terms: "You better get this fucking right." As I told him, I'm going to go talk to my guys. And I don't know, to Dan's point earlier, he said that right next to me, no one else would have known it was happening. And he's right. We better get this right. You know what I mean? I informed him, you can't come back out and argue. No matter what happens, you got to stay in your dugout. You can't come back and argue. We're doing exactly what you asked us to do. And that's when he said that comment to me. Well, we got together, we talked about it. We developed a plan about how we're going to do this. I came back out and I safed the runner. and he went nuts. Came running out of his dugout. I ejected him. He said, "You can't run me. You can't run me now for that." And I said, "I have to." And I turned around. I walked away. Went to third base. My crew chief and the other 3 guys took care of everything. As I had my head down in my book, writing notes. I didn't want to even look up, because I didn't want to be asked, was there any prolonged, anything like that. That was their deal. They took care of it. And I believe we're going to see some of that in the next slide. Some of the way that NCAA has things done, you put details in the program in what seems to be a confusing order or a jumbled order. Some of it doesn't really make sense. So, what's the next? Go to the next one, and I'll kind of show you what that means.
Yeah, give me a sec here. I took that out, but I'll put it back in here. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So give a detailed account of what happened on the field after the ejection. Well, I walked away, real simple. And then were warnings issued. So this is what I mean by that. So give a detailed and complete account of what happened on the field after the ejection. So you spell it out. The next field they want you to fill out is, if a warning was issued prior to the ejection, state what happened. So I did. And then, was there any suspensions? Did he leave? Yes, he did. And then, again, provide team affiliation, name of people suspended. Well, it's like they ask the same question twice. It's a little bit confusing. And it's an online fillable form that you do. But again, have somebody read this over, and we did. And I was actually on the phone with the coordinator while we were writing this. So it's not like there was no input into this. And I think, kind of to Dan and Connor's point, this actually took an hour to do with the 4 of us, and then our coordinator on the phone with us to do. And so it took a little while. And importantly, our coordinator was watching this happen live, because this was the only super regional game in the nation occurring at this time. So we had his complete attention. Whether that's good or bad, I'll let him decide. He was on the phone with me before I could set my hat down in the locker room. So there was just a lot going on in that spot. So,
All right. Any questions talking about ejection reports, report writing philosophy, things like that? Any questions on those or on that type of stuff, guys? Hearing none, I will.
Jacob,
Yep.
this is Matt.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Matt? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing
So
great.
I just wanted to chime in quick, because this isn't baseball. My story isn't baseball related. It's football related. But I had to help our white hat write up 2 ejection reports this season. And what I did was I used voice to text on my phone, but I did something similar to what you guys were talking about. I did voice to text. That way I didn't make any initial errors. It was just fully train of thought. But because I was riding with the white hat at the time, so similar to doing it in the parking lot with my partner, I read it back out loud, and I caught little things that were missing within what was being stated, because it's difficult to do. I hate typing on a keyboard on my phone. I hate doing it. And that's why I like the voice to text. Plus I can, with the going back and reading it over with the partner, I think it's so crucial. That's a very crucial point in that, because then they can interject things in addition to what, even after you guys talking it over, them being able to interject maybe points that you've missed, I think is important.
Matt, I think you make a really great point. And the thing that I would add to this too, in addition to reading it out loud, read it out loud backwards. because from a brain, the way your brain functions, your brain will inevitably fall in love with the way that you write. And so your brain will actually insert words when they aren't actually there. And so if you force yourself to read back to front, then you should theoretically catch more of those types of errors. But yeah, voice to text, it's a great way to do that type of stuff. Like I've had complicated ejections in hockey where, like I know I'm going to have a disciplinary hearing. And so what I'll actually do is I will take out my phone, and through work, we have a voice to text dictation app. And you pay them by the word that they transcribe it. And so I'm driving home from, my game and it was a 3-hour drive for me. But by the time I had gotten, home, I had a full transcribed dictation file of what I had said. And so then I could just go through and proofread it and make sure that everything was correct. I sent it to my partner. He's like, yep, looks good. And we got it done. And so, yeah, voice to text is a great tool to use. I would just make sure we're really, really careful when we look through that, look through voice to text files. Anything else? Hearing none.